Welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast, the show dedicated to celebrating female entrepreneurs' strength, resilience, and innovation. Be inspired by stories of women and what they cherish to help them conquer against all odds. Every other week, you will learn from remarkable women on how they navigate challenges, uphold their values, and create sustainable success. And now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Hello, and welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast. I have a return guest from my Fast Leader Show podcast with me, Stacey Danheiser, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that she's been doing in regards to her business and some of the things that she's working on in regards to new business opportunities that especially the Cherish and Conquer podcast listeners and watchers will definitely be interested in. But before we get into all of that, Stacey, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Yes, I'm excited to be here.
If you could, with where you are today, we'll talk about the future part in a moment. Tell us how you're making a difference in people's lives today with the work that you're doing.
Yes. Well, one of my passions, I've been working with B2B marketing leaders, and I have found that a lot of the people that go through my programs and that I end up doing mentoring and coaching for are women. They're women that are in leadership positions within their companies. And the thing that they all seem to have in common is this lack of confidence with where they are. Maybe they grew up in one vein of marketing, and now they have responsibility for more of that function. And so they come to me with really trying to elevate their role, elevate their influence, their credibility internally. And so, it's one of my great joys to see people build their confidence and to be able to kind of step up as the leaders that they are, and to be able to thrive in an environment which is, not only difficult, like a lot of women that I work with are in technology, which is typically kind of a male-dominated industry, but also marketing, which is this function where everybody has an opinion, and a lot of marketers are working with engineering leaders or operational or finance leaders who don't really understand the function. And so it's like all of these things kind of stacked against that particular role and how to break out of that. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Well, even as you say that, I start thinking about someone who, may be a solopreneur or someone who may have a small business who's, doing, marketing or PR or some of that type of activity and dealing with a client that doesn't quite get it. Because I think one of the aspects of marketing, a lot of different elements and aspects of marketing have changed quite a bit, but it's got some significantly more technical as well as deeper. So it used to be, hey, I need somebody to do marketing. But now, even when you start looking at it just from a, different elements associated with search engine optimization, if that's an area I wanted to focus. Well, I have technical SEO. I have this. It's like, oh my God, it's no longer a situation where, I need a marketing person. It's now a team of, very subject matter, deep, expertise, people, in key roles.
Yes.
And I think that, lack of understanding makes it even, more difficult for people to sell their services and then therefore fulfill a particular expectation. So tell us how that all fits into play.
Oh yeah, it's a good start. So I think, one of the things I like to do with marketing leaders, and I would say anybody selling marketing services, this is 100% applicable, which is really trying to figure out what is it that your customer wants. Okay, so if you're an internal marketer, your customer is the CEO or the head of sales or maybe the head of product. If you're selling into that function, it's really the same, right? You need to understand what's happening with the CEO and with the product team and with the sales team. And often you'll hear language that has nothing, by the way, to do with SEO or some tactical thing that they want. They will say things like, I just want to create more awareness with our customers. I just want to create an engine that's funneling leads into the sales team so they can follow up with some momentum. I just want to create a little bit of awareness in our local community or with doing some events so we can reach the right people. And really, they're using language. They're not talking about the tactics, which is where marketing people tend to go. They're talking high-level strategies and goals. What is it that they want? And so in order to sell the function of marketing, you basically have to know that first, right? What does that business want to achieve? And then how can you position your thing as the answer? And I think a lot of, I worked, I'll give you just a little bit of background. I worked for 14 years in a corporate marketing function where I got sold to a lot by agencies and by freelancers and, all of the big agencies, small agencies, just all of the different partners. And the one thing that always frustrated me was that they were positioning what they were selling as like the silver bullet answer. Now, as a smart marketing leader or as a CEO now, or as finance people or head of sales, if you've been around the block a couple of times, you know that there really is no silver bullet magical answer. And yet, I think a lot of people make that mistake because they're coming in with this lofty promise that ultimately ends up failing and failing to meet the expectations of the CEO, and therefore they're seen as not necessary. And so I've gotten called into a lot of companies where they're saying, we hired this SEO team, or we hired this copywriter, or we hired these people to help us. I don't think they know what they're doing. And I think really what I translate that to is it's not that they don't know what they're doing. It's that what the CEO expected, which was something that maybe was not communicated to the freelancer, there's a disconnect between what the CEO expected and what they are getting. And when that happens, it becomes difficult to position your services as absolutely necessary. So I guess one piece of advice would be really know and understand the impact that your services are making, and don't make lofty promises that you can't keep.
Want more insights from female entrepreneurs? Get complimentary access to Marina's Army for additional tips, tools, and tactics from this episode. Just go to Marina.ai and click Community for access. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Okay. In a world where results matter, and everybody talks about, if you put it in the marketing context, performance marketing, performance metrics, attribution, all of these things that are trying to prove the worth and value and return on investment of marketing spend. How do you not go through the process of essentially, business case building, projections and forecasting and, expectation setting, and then really trying to find some, mutual ground in all of that. So,
yes.
And I'll give you a quick example. So I work on a couple different, lead gen types of programs where there's introductions that happen and an initial discussion that happens. And then at some point, there's a transition that goes into a sales activity that, now their people have to take over. That ain't happening. So if they look at the whole thing and say, well, this isn't converting, it's like, our part is.
Right.
We're getting you the at-bats. We're getting you the opportunities.
Yeah.
So when you think about that from a CEO removed from all of that, they just want results, right? So,
Yes.
So how do you balance that of not setting an expectation in regards to performance? Because otherwise they're not going to invest at all, right? What's this going to do for me? You're saying it's not, I'm not going to have an impact. So where do we find that middle ground so that we can have some success?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I like to use the customer life cycle. And there's a little bit of education, right? Whether you're an internal marketing person or whether you're educating your clients, that you're basically needing to teach marketing. And I found that at least the majority of the companies that I have ever worked for or with right now, which is over 50 different B2B brands, the CEO did not grow up in marketing or sales. They are operations people or engineers, typically. And so there's some education required. If we come in, it's kind of like the same thing, advice that we would tell people, like, don't sell on features, sell the benefits. And so it's really that same concept. If you come in talking about a feature, then all of a sudden you're down in the weeds. And this is where I think a lot of people get in trouble. So it's elevating that whole conversation back up. And I like to use the customer lifecycle as a visual for the CEO or engineers to understand this, that a customer goes through this process to become from stranger to prospect, from prospect into a customer, from customer into a loyal customer. And maybe even the next stage after that is an ambassador for the brand. And so each stage of that journey requires different marketing levers and different marketing activities and different marketing metrics. So to basically position them in saying, we're going to do an ad campaign and we're doing all of these awareness activities, what we're basically saying is we want people to go from become a stranger, they don't know who we are, to now they have a little bit of awareness. And here's the things that we're going to look at to measure that. We're going to look at, do people start following our company on social media? Did we get more people subscribing to our email newsletters? Are they interested in what we have to say? Because B2C companies have figured this out long ago, that what you're fighting for is attention. And if you do not have the eyeballs then you do not have the attention. And if you don't have the attention, then you never earn the right to sell them anything. And so B2B, because the engineering brain, I think, just goes straight from we're going to take a stranger and then all of a sudden they're going to become a customer and we want revenue. It's like, wait a minute. No. There's a little process involved. And if anybody's married, you know this, right? It's like there was a dating period, and that's essentially what we are selling, right? Is there's a dating period, and sometimes the dating period's really fast and sometimes the dating period might be really slow. And these are the things that we're going to look at to measure, awareness and demand and sales. And then what happens after sales? The onboarding process, the upsell and cross-sell process, the retention and renewal process, and then potentially even asking for referrals. So you have this whole entire life cycle. And I have a visual that I like to use for this. So when I show this to CEOs, they're like, oh, I get it. I understand that there's a lot of activity that has to happen. It's not just one thing. It's not like somebody clicks on an ad and then all of a sudden they're buying a multi-million-dollar solution. That just doesn't work. And so the visual, I think, is useful. And then also for marketers strategically to organize, where do you fit? If you're selling a service, knowing where you fit along the customer life cycle so that you can own that piece and to be honest about it. And I think this is what I was talking about, that I think a lot of companies get into trouble because they're coming in trying to say that they own that whole life cycle with their one magical solution and tactic, and they're really not. But that's what the CEO thinks, because they're not using this sort of framework to say, you know what, there's 6 steps. What we're going to do is going to help with step 2. And that's the only step we help with. You're going to need other pieces and parts to help with these other steps. That's not us. That's other partners. And so when you start to kind of be honest about where you're living and where you're playing, then you can really own that part of the journey.
So first off thing I have to ask is, will you share that visual with our listeners and watchers and make it available on your show notes page? So good. Thank you for that. And then the other thing is, what are the risks associated with me being able to hopefully find a customer and a partner that I can work with and get some of those referrals myself, with having that clarity in regards to this is the place where we fit when I maybe don't have understanding to that particular organization in regards to those other components that are required either prior to us doing our work or post in supporting our work.
And you're saying you don't have visibility. I mean, this could be part of the discovery process, right? When you're taking on clients, is to figure out, are you really going to be set up for success? I mean, as a consultant, I go through this myself, right? I go and there was a client, for example, CEO that I was meeting with who said, hey, we have a marketing team. So the things that my criteria is, do they have people that can help execute this? I'm going to come in and make recommendations for marketing strategy. But if they don't have any people there to execute, and if they're so junior that they're not going to understand it, then I'm like, it's not going to go well. There'll be a 5-year engagement for me to try to get the junior level people up to the level that they need. So I look at skill set and team structure. But I also look at like the philosophical understanding of the CEO and the expectations to see, is this something that I can deliver? And so there was one client that asked me, hey, we have a team of people. So I'm like, check, that's great. They're organized right now. I asked how they were structured. They're all organized by tactic. So we have these people that own events and these people that own digital media and these people that own these different tactics. So that's sort of a negative in my book because I'm like, nobody has holistic oversight. The person who was running the organization is a little, the marketing organization was not a marketer. And so they kind of inherited this organization and they might've had a little bit of tension about me coming in. So then I'm like, okay, I don't know. I can deal with that. That's fine. But then he said, are you going to go create our marketing strategy and then come back and present it to us? And I said, absolutely not. This is something we are co-creating. And, if you're willing to let me talk to your customers and to talk to your sellers and to talk to your partners, then I can help build this holistic plan that ultimately one stage of my process is to get buy-in. If the expectation is that I'm going to come and get a little bit of data and then go put it in my Wizard of Oz machine and come back and tell you exactly what to do, like this is not going to work. And so, I would say it's the same process. That's kind of what I go through and what I know to look at now that I've done this enough times. So I would say for anybody selling services, it's like you got to have your own criteria to know what a successful engagement is going to be like. And it can't just be surface level things like, do they have a budget and do I have the right person making the authoritative decisions? No, it needs to be how much involvement do you need to have from the CEO? How much involvement do you need to have from the marketing team? How much involvement and buy-in are you going to need from the IT team or the sales team? And so those are like underlying things that will derail the entire success of the project and how you're perceived that you kind of have to be proactive about.
As you were talking, I even started thinking about applying many of the concepts to things that are not related to, for example, B2B consulting like you were referring to. So even if I'm talking about, I'm going to create, a particular, knowledge product, digital product, I have to think about what many of the things that you were just talking about for people to be able to recommend it. Mm-hmm. Right. And for them to trust, an additional product or future products that I actually put out there. So it's like, okay, so, prior to, so this is all that expectation setting. Prior to, these are some of the things that you have to do. Okay. So now that you have it, these are some of the things that you're going to need to do to be able to, and it's looking at it from that, holistic type of,
yes.
perspective. And even say, and you even see it, we even see it in some, marketing messages where it's like, well, who is this not for?
Yes.
Right?
Oh, great. The kitchen sink approach. Yeah.
Well, and it's, to get to that clarity so that the proper expectations are set, I think, that applies universally.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say too, I think one of the biggest opportunities, because I talk to a lot of companies and a lot of marketers, is around niching down and claiming an expertise in a certain area. It's actually a real struggle that companies are having. And one of the number one sort of disappointments from the C-suite of the marketing team is that the marketing team is not perceived as experts in either the customer or the product. And because of that, they're looking for somebody else. Can anybody come in that's an expert in either my customer or my product/industry? And so the more that you can niche down, especially if you're like a content creator or doing marketing campaigns or sales outreach or trying to package up anything like that, the more that you can say, we help companies in this particular industry. We've been working with manufacturing companies. We understand all the manufacturing challenges and the nuances and the lingo, all of that. That's a huge benefit to companies, as well as alternatively, if you could come in and you understand the customer set. And so if you could say, like, if they're selling to financial services companies, for example, if you're like, I am a financial services expert, I understand financial services, how they make decisions, how they're structured, how, what you're going to need to actually break into one of those accounts. those two roles, I think, are going to be extremely valuable. And so I would just say, like, the more that you can niche down and really try to own a space, the more that whole cycle repeats. You're going to be successful because you're going to have similar types of customers and clients that have, and so you'll start to pick up on the nomenclature and, learn and really understand kind of deeply what's going on there.
Well, I mean, customer connection and relevancy and many of the things that you're talking about that go into that trust factor. Because in the book that you have, Look Inside, the real reason why your organization isn't winning the marketing game, you talk about this low trust trap, and I'd like you to expand upon that a little bit. But you start with the real problem with marketing. So what is the real problem with marketing?
I think, yes. Okay. So the real problem, is that there's that gap, right? That lack of understanding of what the marketing function is really designed to do. And the marketing function really is originally, and I think we've gotten away from it because of technology, as we were talking about a little bit before the show, is to be really dialed in and connected to the customer. And especially in B2B, the team is so far removed that they become like a support function. And so when the marketing team is taking a back seat and is becoming a support function, they're already seen as like tactical executors, right? They lost their strategic seat at the table. They're not there to help influence decisions. They're not providing customer insights. They're not able to provide innovation or ideas or find opportunities or even how to be creative to kind of break through all the clutter, because they're so far removed from understanding the market and the customers and the competitors. And so because they've sort of swung the pendulum the other way to go understand a tactic or a technology.
Okay, so I would dare to say that feeds into the low trust trap. But if you could give us a little bit more understanding and scope of what is the low trust trap.
Yes, the low trust trap. So I talk about the low trust trap as it relates to the agencies, right? The reliance on that. I think everybody has kind of tried to find these solutions, and they've been promised something that they think is going to work. And so they end up like just sort of chasing everything. And it goes back to what we were just talking about, that there's such a disconnect on what CEOs want and what they're being promised, and that those expectations are never being met. And so it ends up like they end up having this low trust with the whole marketing function, not really understanding that marketing is, several different, can be highly strategic part of the organization, but they've kind of pigeonholed it into this one thing. And so now they just distrust all marketers. They distrust all agencies. They distrust everybody that they're ever going to hire into that function. And so it's really difficult when somebody has that perception, especially as a CEO or a founder that's gone through this multiple times. It's really hard to kind of pull them out of that mindset, because they're coming into it just skeptical.
You're right. I mean, the past experiences have continued to reinforce it. So, yes. That makes sense. Okay. So what inspired you to start your own business, and how does it align with the concept of cherish and conquer?
Yes. So I always knew that I wanted to do my own thing. And I started when I was 12. I had a babysitting club, and that turned into me writing a kid's cookbook with a friend. And this was like at a time when they published neighborhood directories. And so we could see all of the families that had kids under the age of 10. And so we were sitting in her closet one day, cold calling all these families, pitching our kids' cookbook. And we ended up getting a ton of sales. We made, several $100s each that we split between us. And so that like sparked my joy of being able to create something and being able to sell something was really exciting. So I took that into high school. I would, create things and kind of sell it out of my locker. And then when I went into college, I actually pursued the marketing path. There was no degree that you could get in sales. And I think maybe some colleges have this now, but many do not still. But I got offered 2 jobs out right when I was graduating. One was in marketing and one was in sales. And I chose the marketing path. And it took me 14 years to basically get out of that corporate environment, but I had a great time. I mean, I was really fortunate. My first job out of school, besides some internships that I had done, was to work at AT&T. And at the time, they had a cable company that later got acquired by Comcast. And so I was in charge of like multi-million-dollar budget. I was working in an organization that valued marketing because it was B2C and there was no other sales team. So it was like marketing is the sales department. And I got to work on some really fun TV commercials and big campaigns and sponsorships and that kind of thing. But at the time, my job was acquisition marketing. It was do whatever you need to do to acquire new customers. It was not tactical because I knew what my job was. I knew what the goal was. It was use every tactic available with the sole goal of acquiring new customers. So I did that job for a while. And then I went over to retention marketing. So I got that side of the house. Do whatever you need to do to retain customers and get them to use our product more. And so I got both of those perspectives. And then I switched over to B2B. I got the opportunity to go to B2B, and I immediately picked up on the undertone that if I was going to be successful in this job, I needed to build a relationship with the sales team. And so that was day one, was to figure out what does it take to be a good seller. And it was a highly technical product. So I had to kind of learn this complex, way of doing things, and how do you have to build relationships, and then it's super technical, and then you have this other technical sales team. And so I was piecing all this together and being the marketing, leader for that organization for a while. And eventually I was like, okay, I'm ready to go do my own thing. I can continue on the corporate path, but I was just not passionate about that. It was very political. I worked in an organization that I went through 9 company acquisitions. So every time we went through one of these acquisitions, I was like starting over. I had another new boss, another new set of deliverables and goals. And, I was looking back, like the projects that I worked on were really setting me up to what I do today. So I spent equal time in strategy and execution. So I spent half my career in B2C and half of it in B2B, and then half in strategy and half in execution. So I got to see like the whole wheel and how everything comes together. And so, and that's, I felt really confident that I could add value to organizations. And so I kind of got to this point where I was working at a financial services company, and I said, I'm ready to do my own thing. I'm going to start my own consulting business, and I'd like you to be my first client. And they said, okay, sure, we'll be your first client. And so that's how it started. And I did not have it all figured out. I think there's a lot of advice, create a side gig and go create a business plan and go do all this work. No, I was a mom of 2 young kids at the time, and had no time to go do a whole side gig, exploration. I just kind of pulled the plug and did it. But I had really great support from my husband, who was like, okay, I think we're ready for you to go do your own thing.
That's an awesome story. And you're right. I mean, a lot of times people are, given the advice of, excuse me, do your side gig as long as you can do your side gig. And then, so, it's nice and refreshing to hear a different perspective. But like you were saying, having it all figured out wasn't something that was there, and it isn't for most of us. So can you share a moment when your passion for your business fueled your perseverance through a tough time?
Yes, I would say, let's go back to COVID. So there was, we had, at the time, we had just moved. So my husband and I decided we're going to move the family from Colorado to South Florida. And so we had just made this long trek and journey. And then 6 weeks later, COVID happened. And we were like, oh my gosh, did we just make the worst decision ever? We're stuck. We're like renting this house. We decided we're going to build a house. He's taking a new job. And then some of the client projects that I was working on, so in consulting, it kind of like ebbs and flows a lot. And so some of the projects I was working on were put on hold or put on the back burner. We're not ready to make a decision. And we kind of panicked, and we were like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to go back to work full time? And I literally was starting to get like post-traumatic stress, remembering my corporate days and how stressful that was. And I was like, I can't do it. But so I was so determined not to go back to a full-time role. And I was so determined to make it work that I basically just like put all of my energy and effort into selling, into connecting with people and building relationships and selling and saying yes to projects, even though normally maybe I wouldn't have, because I was determined to like get through this period. And, you know, I felt very strongly that I was not meant to go get a full-time job. That being said, I did also pursue the full-time job path. And I determined there was like one or two companies that I could work for. And I got all the way to like the final interview and determined I did not get the job offer. And I was like, this is not a good fit. This is not going to work out. And so all of the stars aligned. And then I got a bunch of projects kind of happening after that. And then, you know, here I am, fast forward 4 years later, and did not need to go down that path. So I would say that was sheer determination to make it work.
Well, as you were talking about that, and here's again one of those places where you'll get a different perspective and looking at, you know, a downtime and what I'm willing to accept from a job or a gig or a contract perspective is, you know, some people look at it as I'm going to stick to my values and principles, and I'm going to make sure that I'm connecting with the right company, and then therefore will not take that opportunity. And then some people say, hey, I need to stick to my values and principles in regards to not going back, you know, to a job, not doing this, and therefore I'm going to accept this less than ideal opportunity. So it's real, and that's where I think it's so hard for a lot of people, because, you know, females will get a mixed message in regards to what I'm supposed to do and what I shouldn't do and how to do it. And so you gave a different perspective of accepting, you know, maybe a less than ideal gig. How did that work out for you?
I mean, it was great because it kind of got me through that period. And more importantly, I think it showed me that this is the thing I love about entrepreneurship, is that you actually have the power and control to make the impact you want to make. And really the only thing holding you back is yourself. And I think that's what it taught me, is that if I really want this to happen, like nobody's going to come knocking on my door and just handing me work. Like I have to go out there. I have to put myself out there. I have to be willing to, because up to this point, you know, I got a lot of my consulting projects through referrals or through word of mouth or through people that knew me. And this was a time where I had to kind of break out of that shell. Like that stuff was not coming to me because everything was halted, right? And I was typically working with larger organizations at the time, and especially like Fortune 500 accounts. They were like, we're freezing all of our spending right now because we don't know what's going to happen. And so I was like, okay, who is spending money right now? Let me go try to find some of those types of clients and my friends that are running businesses or other things that are trying to survive. And so I ended up getting projects through that. And so, I think you're right. It was like that principle and that drive of just really proving to myself that I can do it. And I think that's my general mindset, is that, okay, if I need to go find a project, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go find a project. Like I already know it's going to happen. And I believe it's going to happen. And I just have to put in, you know, a little bit of effort, and it will work out.
It's there waiting for you.
It's there waiting for me. Yes.
It's there waiting for you. Okay. So,
exactly.
So when you start talking about, you know, key principles in regards to, you know, self-love and impact on your journey, and, you know, what are some key lessons that you've learned along the way?
Sorry, the lessons about what? Just
about self-love and how it actually, I mean, you know, you talked about the whole transition and moving and this, that, and the other. I mean, how did, you know, and there's one thing when you say, you know, hey, I'm going to go after and I'm going to put all my efforts into it, but then do you know, about sacrificing yourself, how did you preserve that? Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I was just listening to a podcast earlier today, and it was talking about, self-love and forgiveness and regrets. It was all centered around this, like, do you have regrets? And my I was like, what is my philosophy on that? And generally, I would say that I love life and the lessons. And I really approach every challenge like, what lesson am I supposed to be learning right now? And how can I take this lesson and then either apply it or teach it to other people or apply it to my own life and overcome it? And so I think throughout my entrepreneurial journey, I've been doing this for now 10 years. And I think there's a vibe, there's an acceptance and like a confidence, I think, that people, especially women, have to have when you're in an entrepreneurial role, right? Because if you're ultimately selling something, especially if you're in consulting where you're selling yourself. I mean, I'm basically like the executor. I sell the project and then I have to go execute the project. And showing up with that confidence and that belief that you can really help somebody and really make a difference and really make an impact to them, I think it's a feeling. And the other people feel that as well. And so, and I just see a lot of women, I think, that kind of struggle with this because they're not comfortable, or maybe they've come from a corporate environment. They're making the transition from a corporate into trying to do their own thing. And they're questioning, like, do I actually know what I'm doing? And it's like, you have to constantly give yourself a pep talk. I even, they call it imposter syndrome or, other labels, but even now, I'm like, I have to remind myself, I'm like, wait, have I done that before? Yes, you've done this before. You've worked with 50 different brands. You have a training course on this. You've written 3 books on this topic. You've written 45 different LinkedIn posts on this. You've helped this company and this company and this company. I'm like, okay, yes, I know what I'm doing. I've got this. And so, I call it like the brag book or something that, like your brag list of accomplishments. It really is helpful to like keep a running tally of this. Whether it's in your mind or it's written down on a piece of paper, like on the notes app on the phone. I even have a desktop folder that I just like save screenshots of compliments and things that I've gotten so that I can go back and like remind myself, yes, I can do this. I've done this before. Like I've got this. So I don't know if that answered your question, but some of my practices.
I think that, and some great nuggets and examples and, ways that we can go about, like you said, reinforcing, our decision-making process and confidence and, having a brag. Everybody should have their own brag book. The issue is, especially if you're an achievement-focused type of person, you don't do that very well for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's required. It really is.
Well, yeah, and exactly. And I think I recognize patterns of that because I'm like, am I falling into that, need to achieve bucket? And sometimes I don't get the results that I want. And then I have to go back and say, yeah, but what did you learn? What did you achieve in the form of learning or in the form of knowledge or in the form of like a nugget of something? And that's just like a different way, to look at it, that we're always evolving and growing and there's little nuggets to learn along the way.
They are. And I think that's a thing that I learned a few years back in regards to, being competitive versus being achievement driven. Mm-hmm. And that, and we have instances and moments of both, but we lean typically towards one type of, traits than we do the others. And so if you're an achievement focused type of person, even if essentially you won, you still reflect and go back on, but I could have done better. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's not the win that actually fuels you and gives you the encouragement for the next challenge. It's something different. It's that, I have to achieve more. And you have to flip that into the positive that you're talking about. I can't look at it as, well, what did I do bad? I have to look at it as, well, what did I do well? What did I not do so well? And what am I going to do about what I did not do so well? And use it just as a learning opportunity. Yeah. Otherwise, achievement focused and driven person, which a lot of entrepreneurs are that way. It's not a competition. It's I have to achieve something. Mm-hmm. it's one way. It's one of the reasons why we can be so fast to burn out, because it's never good enough, right?
Right. There was a couple. Yeah, I love that. So I felt this way a couple of years ago on LinkedIn, because I was really hesitant to post on LinkedIn, and I think working as a corporate marketer, I was always like hidden behind the company. And so if I was to promote something, it was typically about the company, not necessarily about my own self and my career journey. And so it took me a while to kind of get out of that mindset. And I joined this like challenge on LinkedIn about posting. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this. And it was like, I committed to doing 5 days a week for 52 weeks. And to keep track of this. And it was interesting because I saw my need for perfection and overthinking like dissipate through this journey. And now it's been like, I'm going on year 3 of posting on LinkedIn, and have made some really great connections and, new contacts and new clients and new gigs. And so it's been worth it. But I remember those first days feeling like extremely nervous. What I discovered is like, I love to learn, but I don't like to be a newbie. So I'm like, I just want to skip to the part where I already feel good about this.
That totally makes sense. Thanks so much for sharing.
Yeah. So I would just say, you got to start somewhere. And whether for me, that was, I have to join this challenge and like have some accountability to make myself do this. And then that helped me to just overcome that fear.
Enjoying the show? After joining Marina's Army, subscribe and share the Cherish and Conquer podcast on your favorite platform. Thank you. Now, back to the show.
Very, very good. Okay, so now we're going to actually move to our rapid fire section, and we're going to have some questions with our breakthrough blitz. Now, obviously, you've already helped us break through on some things with the information and experiences that you've shared. But are you ready to go through the blitz?
Okay, let's do it.
Here we go. So, what's your favorite productivity tool or app?
Productivity. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna draw a blank. Okay, lately I've been using Monday.com to organize everything. And it's actually working very well because I have multiple client projects that I'm juggling, including my own business. Finally, I've found something that can keep track of everything and get it out of my head.
Very good. So what's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Ooh, well, I either love yoga. That's my one thing that's been constant in my life. Or I have a mini golden doodle. So I like to take him on walks, or cooking. I've enjoyed cooking lately. So
very good. If you could have dinner with any female business leader, living or deceased, who would it be?
Ooh, I would say Sarah Blakely, the CEO of Spanx. I love her journey and the fact that she's self-made and just did her own thing. I would love to talk to her about that.
So what is your favorite quote or mantra that keeps you motivated?
Oh, my favorite quote or mantra. It's something around learning, always be learning. I mean, really, that is like my motto in life is I've got this, I can learn it.
So what is one piece of advice you'd give to an aspiring female entrepreneur?
Let's see. I would say you can do it. To basically like look back at your past successes and to let that fuel your future successes.
This is my last Breakthrough Blitz question. What's the biggest misconception that people have about being a female entrepreneur, and how do you address it in your own experience?
Oh, yeah. I think the hardest thing about being a female entrepreneur, especially as a mother, is the need to juggle it all. I don't know that feeling goes away, that we feel like we have to be really great at everything. And it's even if you have a very supportive family and spouse, it's just the society sort of perceptions that it's a juggling act and that we have to be really great at everything. So what I have discovered for myself is that I need to take time to do what fuels me, to be able to show up. And for me, that's simply, I love hot yoga, as I already said. So if I can do my 1 hour of hot yoga per day, then that's going to make me like, at least I feel like I've taken care of myself a little bit, to be able to give back to all of the people that have the demands in my life.
Thanks for sharing. Stacey Danheiser, how do our watchers and listeners get in touch with you?
Okay, yes. Well, I'm active on LinkedIn, so please connect with me on LinkedIn. And then I think we're going to share a couple of tools that are on my website, and a link to my my ebook, which by the way is a 20-minute read, to just get grounded on how marketing can make a bigger impact.
We will definitely do that. And we thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the Cherish and Conquer podcast from Marina. Join our community of trailblazing women at community.marina.ai and get access to exclusive resources, checklists, and guides. If you found value in today's episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share it across your social platforms. See you soon, and remember, barriers are for breaking.
Look at me rise above. That's my story.